What's up, guys? This is Jakub. I'm Content AI Manager and founder of Content AI Tools. Welcome to our new episode of the Content AI Show with my new guest, Thomas Smale, who's the CEO of FI International. And I'm super excited because Thomas and Joe Polizzi from the Tilt introduced me to this idea of this exit strategy. So how do I write my own exit strategy and sell my business, which is an amazing idea. But first of all, welcome, Thomas, to the show. Super excited to speak today with you.
Hey, Jakub. Thanks so much for inviting me on.
Yeah, that's awesome. So this whole idea of exit strategy. So we are going to make a deep dive on this topic. But before we go into this subject, can you introduce yourself? So you have a very unique story, which is also related to your business. So can you just explain how this idea evolved about exit strategies and how is it tangled into your biography?
Sure. So 12 years ago, if you were in the online space, there was almost no content out there to help you sell your business. So if you wanted to sell your business now or in the future, there was no one who could help you do that. You could go to a very big investment bank if you had $1 billion business, or you could go to a marketplace and try sell your business yourself. But there was no middle ground if you had a million, 10 million, $50 million business. So back then I spotted there was an opportunity for helping people to sell these businesses. So started producing content and teaching people how you could build a business that could be sold, how you could work on an exit strategy, what you need to do to sell your business. In 2012, so about 2 years into the business, we 100% pivoted and focused to just do M&A. So we just now work with people who want to sell their business and run them all the way through the process from initial valuation and exit strategy all the way through to closing the deal. As time's gone on, so now we get to 2022, there's significantly more content out there about how to sell your business. More people are building online tech businesses which are successful and are selling. And we've been at the forefront of that now for literally 12 years. So we've worked with over 1,200 founders who have successfully sold their businesses. Working with us, that's well over $1 billion in total value created as part of those exits. And we still, I guess, like coming on this show today, love talking to people about the kind of ideas behind exit planning, what business owners should be thinking about. And regardless of who you are, what stage you are in your business, you should be thinking about your exit plan, like kind of from the start of the process or as early as possible in your business.
When I first listened to this podcast with Joe and to the video, and I thought myself, why is nobody else teaching this or nobody else is talking about this? So even the entrepreneurs that I know, they go out, they pitch, they try to win a project, but nobody is thinking about some kind of exit strategy to sell their business. Do you have an answer to this why question? So why is nobody else so much in this idea? Do you know?
Well, I think most people don't think about selling their business until it's too late. So either they need to sell or they're forced to sell for personal reasons, or if they're approached by someone who wants to buy their business or says they want to buy the business. Very few people spend time thinking about what actually needs to be done to increase the value of their business. They just rely on someone coming to them essentially. And the reason why that many companies offering M&A services and talking about exit planning is it's a very difficult business to run. Selling businesses is difficult. So building a company around helping people sell businesses is difficult as well. So there's, I guess, very few companies like ours who have been around for like over 10 years who do a good job and can actually produce content, which is helpful, I guess.
Yeah. So that's also this quote of Joe Polizzi who said, okay, you can define when you want to sell the company or somebody else is going to define. So circumstances, or
I think that's a good quote. Yeah.
yeah, okay, cool. And but just back to your story, you also, when I remember this right, you also bought companies on eBay back in the days. Is that right?
So yeah, so when starting the business, I wasn't just producing content I knew nothing about. I started the business by buying and selling small websites and online businesses for myself, which is how I spotted the gap in the market. And then, so from 2010 to 2012, we're buying and selling myself, offering it as a bit of a service, and also producing content, like a book around how to buy and sell. And then it was 2012 where I realized it was actually a better industry to help other people sell rather than just doing it myself.
Yeah, yeah, very smart. Cool. So how would you define an exit strategy? So what are the ingredients for, in your opinion, for a good exit strategy for for the creator economy, for creators out there?
So two factors. One is thinking about when you want to sell, and that's usually a personal decision. So it might be, I want to sell when this happens. So maybe when you're 40 years old or 50 years old or 30 years old. There's not a right or wrong answer, but most people have some sort of time-based goal. Maybe when they have kids, or their kids go to college, or their kids leave home. It could be anything, but it's usually a personal decision. And then a value-based decision, which is, once a business is worth $1 million, $10 million, $100 million. Again, that's also a personal decision. Most people then combine those two into one, which is, I don't know, I would love to build a $10 million business by the time I'm 30. And that's what they work and focus on. So they're the two fundamental things. There are lots of things you can do to get ready for a sale, but the first thing you need to do is establish what you'd like to achieve. And the reason that's ultimately important is, if you're asking me, what do you need to do to build $1 billion business? That's very different for what you have to do to build a $1 million business. So you can't give everyone exactly the same plan, because everyone's trying to achieve something different. So there's not a list of 10 things every single business should do to be able to be sold, because it really depends what you're trying to achieve in terms of size and value. So that's why it's important to think about it early on and be honest with yourself what you're trying to achieve, and then you can kind of make your own path from there.
Okay, that's awesome information, because I did both. I wrote it down on a piece of paper, and it's hanging on my computer desk, and I have the time and also the value, and but that's the starting point. So what else should people do when they figure out this one? So you have to reverse engineer, basically, right? So you have to think, okay, how do I bring this value? And maybe this is a good point to bring the graph that you guys published also, which are an indicator how to value companies. We can speak about that one, if that's okay for you.
Sure.
So I'm just adding this. I hope. Just let me check. Maybe I just take the frame out. So this is something that this is a screenshot basically from one of your posts of FI International, and maybe we can speak about that, because when I saw this, I thought that's really interesting. So there are different multipliers who can increase the value of your company based on the annual revenue that you have, or based on what exactly are these multipliers? So when my company is currently creating $1 million in revenue annually, is this a multiplier for the annual revenue, or for what is it exactly?
Yeah, so this is I guess an indication based on, and this is for looking at this chart. This is for content-based businesses, so things like blogs or like news websites, things like that are primarily monetized with ads and affiliate offers and things like that. The multiples based on net profit or net income, and we have a formula beyond that, so it does get more complex. but for simplicity, it's net income. It's generally not revenue.
Okay. Net income. Got it.
So if your business makes $1 million a year in revenue and you have 500,000 a year in expenses, you're making 500,000. So it's a multiple of the 500,000.
Got it. Okay. Maybe we can speak about each multiplier. So, for example, age. I thought myself, okay, is a company that is longer in business more in value than a company that is not so far on the marketplace?
So I'll go through each of the factors. So
Yes.
generally speaking, an older business is worth more than a younger business in the eyes of the majority of buyers because it has more history and you can prove the growth rate. So let's say you did $1 million in the year we're just talking now. In the year before, you might have done $500,000. The year before, you might have done 250. The year before, you might have done 100. So as a buyer looking at that, it's quite believable that the business will kind of continue going upwards. If your business is 1 year old and you did $1 million in that first year, that's a great achievement. But what happens in year two? Does the business keep growing? Was it luck? So generally speaking, the older a business is, the more predictable it is, and the more likely a buyer is to pay more. Time. This is a tricky one because it does depend a little bit on the size of the business. This chart is mostly referring to small businesses, so generally below $1 million in revenue. But generally speaking, the less time you as an owner spend on a business, the more it will be worth. So if you're working 60 hours a week and I'm working 10 hours a week and we have exactly the same business, me working 10 hours a week, the business is going to be worth more. And then trends, that one's kind of obvious. A business that is, yeah.
Sorry for interrupting because of the time issue. So this means me as when I want to invest in a company, this means it's obvious, but I just want to just stress it out. When I buy a company, I don't want to invest too much of my own time so that everything is running, the teams know what they have to do, so that everything is smooth without my interaction. That's the basic idea, right? So
essentially, yes. And then also the cost of, and this is why this mostly refers to small businesses, because if we're talking about $100 million business, there's probably a CEO and managers in place. So what the founder is doing is less relevant because there's like a bigger team. In a smaller business, is also the expense of replacing the founder. So how do you hire someone and how much do you have to pay them if you're replacing a founder that's working 60 hours a week? That could be quite difficult to find, or it could be quite expensive to find. So that's why buyers tend to prefer where a founder spends less time. And to your other point, it's exactly that. Most people with the capital available to buy a business, so let's say they have $10 million in cash available, they probably don't also have 40 hours a week to run a business. They're probably successful elsewhere or need to bring in a manager. So that's why that point is relevant.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
And then on the next one's more obvious, trends. If your business is growing consistently and you're in an industry that's growing, your business is worth more than a business that is not growing or is in an industry that's not growing. So that one's self-explanatory. The more you're growing, the higher your multiple. SEO strength, and this is why this graph particular is just referring to businesses that rely on organic traffic from Google. There's lots of buyers out there who like businesses with a high percentage of organic traffic from places like Google. So SEO strength is a bit subjective, but it's things like quality of your content, the amount of organic traffic you have, how organic traffic is growing over time, what kind of companies or what kind of sites are linking to you, and all different things like that. So generally, the better the quality of your SEO, the more the business is going to be worth. Revenue concentration, again, this one can be a little bit difficult to judge, but generally speaking, buyers want a business that gets revenue from multiple sources. So that could be multiple ad networks, multiple affiliate programs, multiple products. If you have a business that sells one product, or you have a business that sells 10, and the business that sells, so your $1 million a year business, if you have 10 products and they make 100,000 a year each, that business is probably going to be worth more than a similar business that has one product that sells $1 million a year. Even though revenue is exactly the same, if there's a problem with that $1 million a year product, then you have zero revenue. Whereas in the business where there's 10 products at 100,000 a year each, if one disappears, you still have 900,000 in revenue. When it comes to content length, this is often relevant because it's a signal of quality. If you have a business that relies on written content and organic traffic, and the average piece of content you produce is 300 words, then it will look relatively low quality versus a business where the average piece of content is 3,000 words. So again, this point is quite subjective. It's not an objective science, but generally speaking, buyers prefer businesses where if you're relying on organic traffic, the average piece of content on the site is relatively long rather than lots of short content. But again, it's not an exact science. It's really just an indication of what could be worth more.
Yeah, really interesting. And I also think these multipliers, so that's very motivating when you, and one thing that you always mention is that you have to think about your exit when you're growing, and not when everything is decreasing your numbers. This is something very interesting, I think, that you have always in mind. So because when everything is good, people don't think about selling because they say, well, that's a great time currently. And this is also something that Joe Politi mentioned also when he sold Content Marketing Institute. So the numbers were flattening a little bit, and there were some negotiations. And but is this something that you would recommend, that you try to sell your company always when you have a high?
From a valuation perspective, yes, that is the best time to sell. But
Okay.
Most people don't think about doing that because most people assume their business will continue growing forever. But the reality is that doesn't happen with all businesses. And economic conditions can change, buyer demand can change over time. So while in general, more and more people are coming into this industry to look to acquire businesses, if you have a business that's growing consistently for many years and you don't sell it, and then 1 year the business declines, all buyers will really be looking at is the year where you declined. So that's what they're going to be thinking about when it comes to making an offer and what kind of valuation you get. So selling a business while it's growing, it may be difficult, but that's why it's important to establish what your time-based goal is and what your value-based goal is. Because if your business is growing, but your goal all along was to sell your company for $10 million, and right now you're worth 12 million, then based on that original plan, it makes sense to sell the business now. And the great thing about being an entrepreneur, you can go launch another business, or you can buy a bit. A lot of the clients we work with sell their business and then they immediately go on to buy another one and run that instead. You don't have to stop. You don't only have one chance in business.
Yeah, that's a cool thing on your website. So it's basically a platform for people who want to sell and also who want to buy. So you're perfectly matching this and making a lot of deals during the years. That's really
yeah. A lot of people will do both. Most people that sell their business don't want to then start another business from zero, but they do want to run a business. So buying one that's already established and making money that they can come in and improve and run is quite attractive. So we have lots of people who have sold their business through us and then bought another business through us as well.
Yeah. Okay, we already got one mistake what entrepreneurs do. So they're not thinking about selling at all, or they're thinking about selling when it's too late. What else do you see as a common mistake when people are in this exit strategy or in this selling process for their own business?
So a lot of people don't realize how big the pool is for buyers. A lot of people think that the only people that will buy their business is a very small group of companies that they know. So it might be there's 5 big competitors. They're going to be the company that will buy me, or a large company that in their industry. So they'll assume it's Apple or Amazon or something like that that's going to buy them. And then they will only build their business around selling to that large company and what that large company would want. The reality is there's a huge number of buyers out there looking to acquire profitable businesses. So if you have a good business that's profitable, there'll be someone that wants to buy it, and likely multiple buyers that want to acquire the business. So it doesn't make sense to build a business around what 1 or 2 companies want. So sometimes people will even have a conversation with a buyer who says, "Oh, I will buy your business in 5 years' time if you can do X, Y, and Z." But it doesn't make sense to do X, Y, and Z because that might not be the best thing for the business, and it might not be something that would increase the value with other buyers. So you shouldn't listen to, I guess, 1 or 2 sources when it comes to what to do with your business. You should do what's best for the business and what's best for the growth, and understand there's a big, for any business, there's a large group of acquirers who'd want to buy that business. And that's ultimately why companies come and work with us, because we have a wide reach. We know how to get in front of all of the relevant buyers for any particular business. And you don't have to just rely on 3 companies. There's probably 3,000 companies that are interested in acquiring you.
Yeah. So during the process of the exit strategy, so I wrote everything down, also researched the potential companies. And one thing is also, so how do I know if they have the budget to buy the company or not? So how can I know they are worth X amount of millions of dollars, but I don't know how much they spent on acquisition and things like that. Do you know, this is very tactical, but do you have an advice on that one? So how do I make a research on potential buyers and know and find out if they have the budget to buy a company?
Well, this is one of the big problems in the industry. Is a lot of companies out there will approach businesses saying they want to buy them, but they don't actually have the money to buy them. So yes, they might like the idea of acquiring it, but they don't have the money. So a big part of our job when we're running a process for a client is to verify that buyers have access to capital and they have the means to actually buy a business. So there's a lot of work we do behind the scenes to do that. The easiest way to do it, if you are approached and you don't want to work with an M&A firm, you want to do it yourself, is ask for proof of funds. Any serious acquirer will be able to prove and will happily prove to you they have the ability to buy your business. So if your business is worth $5 million, they should be able to prove they have either $5 million in a checking account or they have access to $5 million through an investor or whatever it might be. So the best thing to do is ask. Where a lot of people get themselves into trouble as business owners is they will ask a buyer, and then a buyer will say, they will pretend that they're extremely insulted by the fact they get asked, and they'll persuade the seller to share information with the buyer that they probably shouldn't do. So confidential information about the business, without the buyer actually proving that they're qualified. But any serious buyer should be more than happy to provide proof of funds. So that's the best thing to do. You should just ask them. You shouldn't have to look it up yourself. There's no reliable way, unless it's a public company, there's no reliable way of knowing how much money a business or a person has. Like, social media doesn't necessarily tell you. If someone posts pictures on their Instagram account or their company Instagram account driving like a Ferrari or with an expensive watch, that doesn't necessarily mean they have a lot of money. And it could also be people don't even have a social media account. That also doesn't mean they don't either. So the best thing to do is just ask. rather than relying on I don't know, like press releases or other speculative sources to verify it.
Uh, uh, but when for example, from one of my potential buyers, I organized an interview, and this should be C-level, right? So CEO or CMO level, some kind of C-level entrepreneur who is on the board or something, who can speak about this topic. But otherwise, when you interview some employee of the company, that wouldn't make sense, right? So,
Well, no, because if they're no, it does make sense because if they are working in an acquisition capacity, so they have the ability to make a decision, that either they or someone in the team should be able to have access to like finance department who can prove these things. So if you're just talking to someone in their, I don't know, marketing team, for example, who says, yeah, we would love to buy your business, that doesn't mean anything if they're not a decision maker in the process. Like they might like the idea, but if they're not a decision maker, it doesn't mean anything. So you need to also make sure that they're actually like involved in acquisition process if it comes to that.
yeah. Cool. In the reportings that I read that you published, you also focus on SaaS companies, so software as a solution companies. Can you maybe just in a nutshell compare how is it different when you compare software business with content entrepreneur business? So I mean, it's software, yes, but other than that, what are the metrics the same or are they different when it comes to software business, selling a software business, and are the volumes higher? So I'm just curious.
So
Because I also have some software, customers, so therefore I'm asking. Yeah.
So the concepts are very similar. The multiples are a little bit different, and the metrics are different. So, for example, in a content business, because you generally don't own a customer, there's no retention data or anything like that. With a SaaS business or a software as a service business, you have retention data, or churn is generally referred to. So revenue churn, customer churn, net revenue retention, lots of different ways it can be referred to. But in a software business, that's generally one of the most important metrics to buyers. Whereas in a content business, that is not a relevant metric, so it would never come up. So conceptually, a lot of the things we already spoke about would be similar, but the metrics are different. And it's the same for every different business model. Every business model has things that are relevant and things that are not relevant. So it does depend. And that's why ultimately, if you're trying to sell your business, you need to work with an expert who knows about your particular business model. There's no point hiring I don't know, a company that knows how to sell restaurants if your business is a online content business, because yes, they know how to sell businesses, but they probably don't know anything about your particular industry. And every different business model is different and has its own nuances and things you need to understand.
Yeah, makes sense. So that's the reason why people should come to you, because you have all the experts, right? So in different niches.
But you should only work with us and any other firm if we've sold a business like yours. So people like to work with us because we've sold 1,200 businesses, which means we've seen a lot of different businesses and know a lot about a lot of different industries. But you also should not call me if you want to sell a restaurant, because I know nothing about selling a restaurant. I might be able to figure it out or know some of the concepts, but not all of it.
So what are the niches that you have experience in? So content business, obviously, then
content businesses, software businesses, e-commerce businesses, and then service businesses or online service businesses. And then various within those four categories or similar to those four categories, but those would be the main ones.
E-commerce, service business. So service business means something like consulting. So
like for example, like a SEO agency or a content agency or a marketing agency, design agency, something like that.
Okay, got it. Okay, cool. So e-commerce, I have a good friend who's in e-commerce. Maybe this could be an interesting connection. But yeah, I will think about that one. If that, because he's sitting in a board, and I'm not sure what he's doing, but he's a keynote speaker, and maybe this could be interesting. And basically on e-commerce, and travel through the world and give speeches and things like that. Yeah, but that's also one important thing that I think this is a mindset thing, that you have to be okay that you will be not replaced, but that you don't have to be in this company and have this active role, so that you become some guy of who gives advice, but he's not in the operative business. So I think this is a big mind shift thing for many entrepreneurs who are used to do the stuff and create, especially creators, create content and be on the front. And this is something that you have to switch, right? Especially as creator, when you want to sell your own business, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. It does also depend on the size of the business. So the bigger your business gets, you're more likely to hire senior people and managers who run a lot of the business. You don't necessarily need to be involved, but you can do it both ways. That doesn't mean you shouldn't spend time running your business if you want to, but it's definitely not essential. And if you want to sell, it's going to be easier for you to remove yourself after the sale happens if you don't spend much time on the business as it is. But when you're growing and when you're early stage, almost every business needs the founder or founders to be actively involved. That's usually unavoidable. But as you grow, you can start to hire people who are better than you at their job, and they will help the business grow without your input.
Yeah. Okay, guys. When it comes to business models, so there are different ways how, as a creator, I can earn money. So through consulting, through sponsorship deals, through subscription and things like that. How is there a hierarchy? How you would say these are more important when you want to sell one day your business? I mean, obviously, when it's based only on consulting, it will become very hard to sell it, right? Because to some degree, it's my knowledge, so I have to remove myself.
So I guess that's one of the points around reliance on the owner. So how much time they spend and how reliant the business is on them. So if you're a consulting business, but the only consultant is you, then that could be quite difficult. But if you're a business like FE International, for example, the business is not just me. We have nearly 150 people across everything we do. So to deliver our service properly, that does not just need me. I might be involved and have some input. So if I was to sell my business, it probably wouldn't require me because there's 149 other people involved. But if I was just doing everything by myself and it was just me, then it would be not impossible to sell, but much harder because it would be entirely reliant on my time. And then in that case, you're not really selling a business, you're selling a job, which probably means the business is going to be difficult to sell. So you need to work on removing yourself from the day-to-day if you want to sell a business like that. It doesn't mean you can't sell a service business, but you can't sell a service business if it's just you.
Yeah. So you also post a lot on LinkedIn, and in the last couple of weeks and months, I liked also many of them. And one thing was also documentation. So that's, I think, a big pain for many entrepreneurs who want to be on the front and want to create, but are not good in documenting things. So what is your idea about documentation? So how much is enough? What would you document? What are the most important things when you want to sell your business and have this idea of documentation in your head?
Yeah, so it really depends a lot on the business, but essentially what documentation means is that if you left your business tomorrow, could someone come in and run the business with the documentation you have internally? So if you have a big, and that also means making sure and this is just best practices for managing in general, making sure your team have processes as well they can follow. So all documentation really means is that anything you do day to day could be replicated by someone who came in based on generally written. It could be videos. Some people like videos. Some people like written content. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's whatever works best for you. But documentation is all about making sure that any processes within your business are written down so someone could come in and follow them if you were not there. And then in a way that also makes the business less reliant on you. So you might be doing the work at the moment, but someone else could come in and replace you because there's a very clear documentation or videos they could watch to learn how to do everything.
Yeah. Sounds nice. Writing this down. Yeah, I would prefer video because it's smooth. You can show things, and yeah, but it depends on the business. Yes, cool. So when people want to get in touch with you, and so you can on your website, I know you can subscribe and decide, I think, if you're interested in buying or selling or both. So what's basically the process when people want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so if you just want to ask me a specific question, you can usually find me on social media. So LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, we're quite active on. So it's the company. If you own a business and you want to find out what it's worth, we offer free valuations to anyone that inquires, assuming it's a business model we know about. If you're thinking about buying a business, you can go on our website and find about buying. If you want to read more content, some of it that we've been speaking about today, we have a resource section. So we have white papers, industry reports, blog content, podcasts, all those kind of things you can find. So you can navigate there on our website as well. But we have lots of different things. You can read more in depth on everything we've spoken about today.
Yeah, definitely. I can highly recommend these topics. I read a couple of your reportings, and this was also a screenshot that I showed that we spoke about these multipliers. I think so. For me, it was always a black box. What are people? So investors, what are they looking for? How are they thinking? And these multipliers, they just help me to identify, okay, what is their checklist? What is in their head, and how are they making decisions based on which valuation, basically? Because before I read these all things and listened to the podcast, I knew nothing about that. Now I'm knowing a little bit, and based on that, I'm making decisions for my own business. That's the important thing, I guess, that you not only consume these things but also execute and think, okay, what is my goal, and how I'm achieving these goals. It just helped me a lot. So really appreciate your work and your help with everything you do. And super curious about the coming years and months and what you are also going to produce in the coming in the future.
Great to hear. Thanks so much for the kind words.
Yeah, really appreciate it. That's awesome. And you're also very chatty also on LinkedIn. So I'm not sure if you're also commenting. So if I like something, is that really?
It's always me. Yes.
Always
the team do help. Some of the content the team help with, but comments are always me.
Okay, cool. Good. That's always good to know. Okay. Something last that you want to share? Is there anything that you would love to share or mention that I didn't ask you?
No, I think the thing ultimately it comes down to think about what you ultimately want to sell your business for. And I guess our pitch would be we offer everyone a free valuation. The reason a free valuation is helpful is figuring out where you want to go to with your exit strategy depends on what your business is worth today. So if we give you a valuation today of $5 million and you want to sell for 10 million, then you can figure out a plan to get from 5 to 10. If we give you a valuation today of $1 million and you want to get to 10 million, that is, you probably need to have a slightly different plan. So that's why free valuations are helpful as part of your exit to establish where you are and where you might be able to get to.
Yeah, makes sense. So you also give legal advice? Is that also something that you offer?
We do have an internal legal team. Yeah. So most clients will rely on that. And then sometimes they'll hire their own attorney or lawyer to help with specific areas. But we do have a general counsel internally. And we do draft documents and all those kind of things for any deals.
Okay. And the business model is basically you get a cut of the deal that you're supporting, basically.
Exactly right. So we only get paid when the business sells. We don't get paid for anything else, only when the business closes.
Which, I mean, this is super interesting because that motivates you also to raise the price, basically, because your cut also becomes higher when you sell the company, right?
And that's why, to answer your earlier question, why a lot of M&A firms like us don't exist, because it's a very difficult business to build. Because if you're not good and you can't sell businesses, then you don't make any money, or you make literally zero, and you can't stay in business for very long. So that's why there's not many companies like us out there and actually producing content as well, because it's not easy.
Uh, I think it's interesting. It's an interesting niche. I just super curious and definitely will follow. And I mean, I'm basically liking everything that you post, but yeah, I will continue to do this.
Cool. Well, thanks very much.
Okay. So far, we don't have any questions. If you guys have any questions to Thomas, just write it in a comment. I will forward to him. And yeah, thanks for watching and see you in the next episode. Thank you. And thank you
Thanks
for your
so
time,
much.
Thomas. Thank you.
Thank you.